Every spell cast in the dark eventually circles back to burn the hand that made it. They tried to silence you, chosen one, not with words, but with energy, envy, and obsession. They gathered behind closed doors, whispering your name with venom, hoping the universe would strip you of your power. But the universe doesn't answer to fear. It answers to frequency. And your frequency was never theirs to mute. You see, when a person tries to kill a voice that carries truth, it's like trying to cage thunder. It will still echo across the sky, and eventually lightning finds a way to strike back. That's exactly what happened here. Someone tried to bury your voice, and the universe made sure they got buried in the consequences instead. Even science agrees. Every word, every vibration we release carries measurable energy. Your voice, your truth, is not just sound. It's a signal. When they launched their dark intent against you, they weren't just targeting a person. They were trying to jam a signal that wasn't meant to be silenced. Energy, once released, doesn't vanish. It transfers, it mutates, it finds balance. So when they aimed that destructive force at you, the recoil was inevitable. The universe doesn't lose track of frequencies, it recalibrates them. And this time, it recalibrated through justice. Someone in that circle paid a heavy price. And thank you, chosen one, for being here. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing like and subscribe to help spread this message to more souls, because it's the responsibility of all of us to spread the light. Thank you, chosen one, for being part of this mission. You're not just watching, you are part of a force. Now back to what really happened. You see, they underestimated you. They thought your silence meant surrender, that your distance meant defeat. They had no idea that while they were plotting under the influence of jealousy and darkness, the universe was already building your protection around you like an invisible fortress. They were convinced their rituals, their intentions, their collective bitterness could cage your energy. But you're not powered by their permission. You're powered by purpose. You're the type of soul that speaks truth, even in silence. That's why they couldn't destroy you, because your very existence is a frequency of resistance. What they didn't understand is that energy never lies. The universe reads intent, not appearances. And while they wore masks of calmness and fake smiles, their hearts were transmitting pure envy. Every move they made was recorded in the field of energy that surrounds us all. When they sent out harm, the universe marked it, traced it, and stored it for collection. So when chaos began to return to their lives, when health started to crumble, finances dried up, and accidents began to happen, it wasn't coincidence, it was collection day. Because every harmful vibration they released had to go somewhere, and since you didn't absorb it, it went back home, to them. Let's call this what it is: energetic accountability. When you're chosen, your protection doesn't come from fear or force. It comes from alignment. You operate on a higher frequency, and low vibration energy can't survive in that field. It's like trying to pollute the wind. The toxin just gets blown back to where it came from. That's why you might have noticed people who used to laugh at you suddenly facing one tragedy after another. They thought they were untouchable because their attacks were invisible, but the universe doesn't need proof. It needs balance. And here's something powerful. While they were busy plotting, you were healing. You were learning self-control, peace, emotional balance, all things they can't weaponize against you. What they tried to curse became your training ground. Every sleepless night built your mental armor. Every strange symptom you couldn't explain was your energy adjusting, filtering out what didn't belong to you. You were never the victim, you were the lesson. They played with the wrong soul, one that came coded with resilience. When you stayed silent, they thought they'd won. But silence is not weakness, it's strategy. You let them expose themselves, you let karma map their every move, and now the return is complete. Someone in that chain of energy collapsed under the very vibration they released. Maybe it looked like bad luck, a sudden illness, a freak accident. But for those who can see patterns, it's no mystery. The universe has a way of closing cycles perfectly. And now here you are, breathing, glowing, alive, the living proof that dark energy can't destroy a soul aligned with truth. You didn't just survive the spell, you outlasted it. You turned every attack into fuel. You kept shining when they tried to dim you, and now their greatest fear is realized. Your voice is louder than ever. You are not a victim of what they did. You're the consequence of their mistake. So when the universe balanced the scales and someone fell, it wasn't random, it was rhythm, the same rhythm that plays when truth meets deception, when love meets envy, when light meets shadow. Chosen one, understand this clearly. They didn't silence you, they summoned your strength. And now the very power they tried to erase has become your spotlight. And thank you, Chosen One, for making it this far, because what you've just heard is only the surface. What's coming next will leave your jaw on the floor. We're about to break down exactly how this massive spell was designed, who was behind it, and why someone didn't make it out alive. If you've ever felt drained, silenced, or suddenly lost your fire for no reason, this next part will hit like a lightning bolt. Drop the number 777 in the comments if you're ready to expose the truth they never wanted you to know. And if this message is waking something up inside you, consider fueling this mission with a super thanks. Every bit helps us keep spreading light into the shadows. Whether it's a few cents or more, your support protects this frequency. And now, let's go even deeper. One layer at a time. If you truly are a chosen one, you'll feel the pull to stay until the very last word, because once you see what was really done behind your back, you'll never look at your silence the same again. Let's begin. Number 1, they didn't just cast a spell, they pulled the pin on their own self-destruction. When you throw fire at a mirror, don't be shocked when your own house burns down. They didn't just perform a spell, Chosen One, they lit a fuse and didn't realize the bomb was under their own feet. This wasn't some little spiritual tantrum. This was a full-on declaration of war against your energy, your truth, your voice. And not because you wronged them, you didn't even touch them, but your very existence, your presence in a room, your words, your silence, it disturbed the false foundations they were standing on. You were a frequency they couldn't tune out, so they tried to cut the power. But in doing so, they short-circuited their own system. Ask yourself this: why would someone go so far? Why would a person gather others, light candles, whisper your name at midnight, and call on unseen forces to silence you? Because you were never just talking. Every word you spoke sent shockwaves through their illusions. It made the lies they were hiding behind tremble. Your truth exposed their rot. You didn't curse them, your clarity did. Your voice was the match, and their guilt was the gasoline. That's why they panicked. That's why they attacked. They weren't scared of you. They were terrified of what you represented, a soul they couldn't control, a light they couldn't dim, and a frequency that shattered their illusions without ever raising a hand. You were never the target, you were the threat. The spell wasn't about hurting you, it was about shutting down your impact. They wanted your power, but they couldn't clone it, so instead they tried to kill the signal. But here's what they failed to grasp. You're not powered by ego or fear. You're powered by alignment. You speak from a place they've never been, truth. And truth doesn't get hexed, it gets heard. Even in silence, your vibration was doing damage. That's why their rituals felt urgent. You were too steady, too unbothered, too focused, and that drove them insane. The energy they launched was meant to scatter you. Instead, it became a boomerang. Because energy isn't loyal to the sender, it's loyal to the frequency it matches. When they sent destruction, but your field was anchored in truth, the chaos couldn't land. It had no home inside you. So where did it go? Back to the sender. That's not karma. That's physics. That's spiritual law. The universe doesn't waste energy. It redirects it to where it belongs. Someone thought they were playing God, but they forgot the universe plays by its own rules. And this time, someone lost more than control. They lost everything. You don't need to clap back. The universe already did. What's scary for them now is that you didn't die, you didn't fold, and you didn't vanish. You glowed, you rose, you grew louder, and that's what eats them alive. The silence they tried to force on you has turned into a roar. You're not a victim of their spell. You're the proof that their entire plan failed. They didn't cast a spell. They declared war on the frequency of truth. And truth doesn't die. It echoes. Forever. Number 2, they tried to mute you, but your voice broke through every dimension like thunder in a vacuum. When you silence a voice aligned with truth, the universe responds by turning the silence into a storm. They really believed if they could shut your mouth, the world would stop hearing you, that your power was just tied to your speech, to the physical voice box they could target with spells, curses, gossip, or intimidation. But what they didn't understand, and never will, is that your voice isn't just in your throat. It's in your energy. And energy doesn't obey their rules. They tried to bind your tongue, chosen one, not realizing you were speaking on more levels than they could comprehend. They thought they could tape your mouth shut while the rest of your being stayed quiet. But your spirit had other plans. Imagine this: someone tries to block a single radio station, not realizing you're connected to every tower in the city. That's what they were up against. Your voice was never one-dimensional. You don't just speak through sound. You speak through your presence. You speak through your walk. You speak through your gaze, your aura, your absence, your timing. You speak through the way people shift uncomfortably when you enter the room. Not because you said anything, but because your very being vibrates with undeniable truth. You don't have to shout to be heard when your energy walks into the room before you do. They tried to shut down your vocal cords while your frequency was busy shaking up timelines. That's why nothing they did worked. The rituals, the smear campaigns, the spiritual sabotage, all of it failed. Because every time they blocked one door, the universe cracked open 10 more. When they tied up your tongue, your dreams got louder. When they drained your energy, your silence grew heavier. When they made people turn on you, your absence started haunting the room like unfinished thunder. You can bury the voice, but you can't bury the echo. So why were they so desperate to stop you? Because the truth you carried wasn't casual. It exposed the games. It disturbed the fakes. It made the liars squirm. You don't just communicate with words. You communicate with alignment. You walk in such clarity that it confronts the delusions others have wrapped themselves in. That's why they couldn't stand to hear you, even in silence. Every gesture, every breath you took was saying something they didn't want to hear. You reminded them of what they weren't. You reflected back everything they were hiding. And that reflection, that brutal, blinding frequency of truth, was louder than anything you could have ever said out loud. They didn't just try to silence you, they tried to scramble you, to make you question your own reality, to choke not just your throat, but your confidence, your sense of inner knowing. But the thing about chosen ones is this: When you try to cut off one sense, another grows sharper. When they dimmed your voice, your intuition kicked in like a floodlight. You started speaking in ways they couldn't trace, through dreams, synchronicities, gut feelings, and divine interruptions. You became fluent in a language they couldn't decode, and that terrified them more than anything. Imagine trying to block a message, only to realize the message is now speaking through signs on the street, lyrics in a song, random strangers, and perfectly timed events. That's what started happening in your life. Your soul rerouted the message. You became the walking embodiment of what they tried to erase, and worse, the universe started amplifying it. You were no longer just a person. You were a living transmission. That's why their rituals started backfiring. The very energy they were trying to mute became so loud that it couldn't be ignored. They may have silenced your platform, but they couldn't silence your presence. They may have turned people against you, but the frequency of truth kept waking up those who had ears to hear. The irony? The more they tried to make you invisible, the more visible your energy became. Your silence started shouting, your stillness started prophesying, and your distance became undeniable proof that something greater was protecting you. They thought they were burying a voice, but they ended up uncovering a legend. So why didn't it destroy you? Why didn't the chaos, the spells, the rejection, the sudden silence, why didn't it swallow you whole? Because you weren't just being protected, you were being upgraded. Every attack became a trigger for expansion. Every attempt to cage you made your wings grow. What they called binding was actually activation. They tried to mute the frequency, but they ended up turning it into a broadcast. Let me answer what you're probably wondering. Why didn't they stop? Didn't they see it wasn't working? No, because people operating in shadow rarely know when they've lost. They confuse resistance with success. They think the pain they cause means they're winning. But in truth, every bit of spiritual pressure they threw at you only proved how much light you carry. You were never just annoying them. You were awakening something their demons couldn't handle. And here's the wildest part. They weren't just afraid of what you said. They were afraid of who you might awaken. You see, chosen ones don't just speak for themselves. Your frequency acts like a signal booster for others. One word from you, one post, one presence, and other sleeping souls start to rise. That's what they feared most. That your truth wouldn't just set you free, but it might set others free too. And that would destroy everything they built on manipulation, illusion, and fear. They thought this was about silencing a person, but it was never about you as an individual. It was about muting a movement. And that's what makes you dangerous, because you're not just a voice, you're a vibration, a wave, a ripple in the matrix, a disruption in the system. And disruptions can't be caged. They echo through generations. They didn't understand that your voice exists in layers. There's the one that speaks through your mouth, yes, but then there's the one that speaks through your posture, through your peace, through the way you say nothing at all, and still shift the atmosphere. You don't need to go live on social media to be heard. You exist, and the room takes notice. So when they tried to bind you, chosen one, they triggered your multidimensional nature. You became louder in ways they couldn't mute. You became sharper in ways they couldn't dull. You became more magnetic, more clear, more dangerous to every lie they ever believed. And now, you've become what they feared, undeniable, unstoppable, unmuted, because truth doesn't die in silence, it multiplies. You weren't silenced, you were amplified. Number 3, the spell didn't hit you, it slapped them with their own reflection. When you strike a mirror, don't be shocked if your own blood stains the glass. They aimed their spell at you, chosen one, but it never touched your soul. Instead, it hit something they never expected, a mirror made of unshakable energy. They weren't attacking a victim. They were throwing venom at their own reflection. That's why everything started unraveling for them, not because you retaliated, but because the universe simply turned the lights on. You didn't absorb what they sent. You reflected it, sharper, louder, and karmically sealed. Your energy field doesn't operate like theirs. It doesn't latch onto envy, bitterness, or chaos. It processes it like poison and ejects it immediately. Imagine someone tossing black ink at the ocean, hoping to stain it. But instead, the wave they disturbed rises up and crashes right back onto their head. That's the kind of backlash we're talking about. They didn't just trigger karma, they collided with it. You don't have to throw a punch when the universe already filed the lawsuit. See, they misread your silence. They thought peace meant powerless. But in truth, your peace was the warning. It was the quiet before the correction. They expected you to break, to beg, to react. Instead, you watched. And that non-reaction triggered a universal recalibration. The chaos they wished on you had no anchor, so it returned home, not as revenge, but as reflection. You may ask, why did it get so bad for them? Because energy always completes its cycle, and when it can't land on the target, it circles back to the source, intensified. They thought they could curse you and walk away clean. But energy has a signature. Every word, every ritual, every jealous glare carried their fingerprint. So when the universe delivered the bill, it had their name printed all over it. You didn't win by striking back. You won by holding up the mirror and letting the universe show them who they really were. The spell didn't silence you, it exposed them, and that exposure was the loudest judgment of all. Number 4, they didn't cross a person, they violated universal law. Messing with a chosen one isn't a mistake, it's a breach of cosmic contract. And the fine? It's everything they thought they had. They didn't just come for you, chosen one. They crashed headfirst into universal law, and now they're suffering the legal consequences of that spiritual violation. They thought they were attacking a person with weaknesses and emotions. But what they touched was sacred architecture, a walking enforcement of energetic balance. You weren't just passing through life, you were sent, encoded with law, wrapped in frequency, and wired with consequences for anyone foolish enough to disrupt your purpose. Imagine trying to punch gravity and then being shocked when your fist breaks. That's what they did when they cast that spell. When they sent curses, slander, and wicked intent your way, they activated a response mechanism that has nothing to do with emotion and everything to do with alignment. Because you weren't built for revenge, you were built for balance. The moment they moved against you, the system didn't panic, it corrected. They thought they were pulling strings in the dark, but the string was wrapped around their own throat. You may be wondering, how can energy be so precise? How does the universe know who's guilty? Simple. Every action carries a code, a vibration, a fingerprint, a return address. And chosen ones, you operate on a frequency too pure to absorb garbage. Your system rejects it automatically. When something low vibe enters your field, the energy has only 2 options: transmute or return. And when it's hate wrapped in spellwork, it doesn't transmute, it rebounds. Hard. They weren't punished, they were processed by a system that never misses a beat. So when someone lost their mind, their health, their grip on reality after coming for you, don't feel guilty. That was the universe rebalancing its scales. You didn't lift a finger, you didn't need to, because the truth is brutal. You are the enforcement. They forgot that chosen ones don't need to fight. You are the fight. You are the force. You're not under the law. You are the law, and every time they trespassed against your energy, they were etching their own downfall into the fabric of fate. Number 5, they tested dark tools on you and got burned by unbreakable light. You don't test plastic swords on lightning unless you're ready to melt. They thought you were soft because you didn't react, silent because you didn't clap back, easy because you didn't expose them. But what they mistook for weakness was actually discipline, the kind of restraint that only comes from someone who's already walked through invisible fires and lived to glow brighter. You didn't fight because you didn't have to. You've outgrown their level of warfare. Their spells were old toys in your dimension. They were throwing pebbles at a fortress made of cosmic titanium. Imagine aiming a water gun at a thunderstorm and expecting it to flinch. That's exactly what they did. They circled up with their rituals, chanted your name with poisoned intent, and believed they were stirring power. But you, chosen one, are not powered by fear or mimicry. You're powered by origin. Your silence wasn't surrender, it was a warning, the kind the wise recognize before they overstep. Sadly, your enemies weren't wise. What they brought was recycled energy, imitation magic, second-hand darkness, rituals soaked in insecurity. But you operate from source frequency. You don't run on performance. You are the performance. Your energy doesn't shout. It resonates. It moves walls without motion. That's why nothing they threw landed. Your spirit didn't even register their chaos. It filtered it out like background noise on a divine frequency. They were coding curses in the dark, but your soul speaks in the language of original fire. And when that original fire detected interference, it didn't lash out, it corrected. The same candles they lit became portals of exposure. The chants turned into echoes bouncing back at them. Their tools short-circuited because they were never built to handle the vibration of truth. The more they tried, the harder they fell. Not because you fought, but because your very presence rewrote the battlefield. You are a firewall, an encrypted vessel, a soul too ancient for their modern games. They tested their weapons on the wrong frequency, and the recoil taught them the one law they'll never forget. True power doesn't retaliate. It reflects and rises. Number 6. Their spell wasn't power. It was a cry for relevance in a world that forgot them. The desperate don't cast spells to win. They cast them to feel like they still matter. Let's be clear, chosen one, that spell they tried to throw at you wasn't power. It was panic. It wasn't strength. It was a scream in the dark from someone who no longer knew how to exist without manipulating others. You weren't targeted because you wronged them. You were targeted because your peace exposed their inner chaos. Your presence wasn't just light. It was a spotlight on everything they'd been pretending to be. And that kind of exposure, it breaks people who depend on illusion to survive. Imagine a broken light bulb trying to outshine the sun. That's what their rituals looked like in the spirit realm. They weren't practicing spirituality, they were performing emptiness. And the deeper they fell into darkness, the more they needed someone to project their pain onto. That someone was you. Your calmness made them feel irrelevant. Your silence made their noise sound hollow. You weren't a threat. You were a reminder that they had no real connection to anything pure anymore. They didn't summon darkness to destroy you. They summoned it because you stopped feeding them. When they couldn't control your energy, your attention, your reactions, they looked for something else to dominate. That's what spiritual addiction looks like. The spell wasn't about you. It was about them begging the void to give them back the feeling of importance your presence once accidentally gave them. They weren't calling power, they were calling proof that they still mattered. But darkness doesn't validate, it consumes. Every ritual they performed in your name became a diary entry of their own disconnection. And the universe, it kept the receipts. That's why every chant backfired. Every candle they lit only highlighted the darkness in them. And you? You kept rising. Not because you fought, but because truth doesn't sink when lies collapse. It floats above the wreckage. They didn't reveal your weakness, they exposed their dependence, and that spell, it didn't curse you. It confirmed you were the one carrying the real power all along. Number 7. The death wasn't tragic. It was the bill for playing with fire they couldn't control. When you summon death to someone else's door, make sure your soul can afford the cost, because energy never forgets the sender. Let's make this crystal clear. Chosen One. What happened wasn't an accident. It wasn't random. It wasn't just some freak event. That death was a cosmic receipt. They tried to weaponize energy meant to kill, and when it couldn't touch you, it did what energy always does. It completed the cycle. That's not superstition. That's spiritual law. You were sealed, encrypted, off limits. But energy, once summoned, must find a home. And when it couldn't find yours, it returned to the only frequency that matched its intention, the ones who birthed it in the first place. Imagine trying to drown someone wearing armor, only to slip and sink in your own current. That's exactly what happened. They summoned something ancient and ruthless, death energy, thinking they were immune, thinking their rituals, their secrecy, their intent would protect them from blowback. But the universe doesn't operate on emotional bias. It operates on alignment. And they weren't aligned with anything except ego, desperation, and delusion. You didn't have to lift a hand. The current they created dragged them under. They played with chaos like it was a pet, not realizing it was a predator. That death wasn't a curse on you. It was the debt they owed the very energy they called upon. They invoked destruction, but forgot the one rule every chosen one lives by. What you send out with evil intent doesn't disappear. It circles until it finds its maker. The universe doesn't rush, it calculates, and when it collects, it does so with surgical precision. So no, chosen one, you're not lucky to still be here. You're untouchable because you never left alignment. Your frequency was too pure for death to digest. It had no door in your field, so it knocked on theirs. And when they answered, thinking they had control, they discovered too late that darkness always demands payment. They weren't punished. They were claimed by the very chaos they unleashed. That's not divine wrath. That's divine order, and order never misses. Number 8. They didn't hate your voice. They feared what it woke up in the shadows. Your voice didn't offend them. It exorcised them. They didn't want you quiet because you were wrong, chosen one. They wanted you silent because your truth sent shockwaves through the fake realities they built their entire identity on. Every time you spoke, it was like striking a tuning fork in the middle of a haunted house. The spirits they served trembled, the illusions they worshipped cracked, and the lies they clung to started to bleed. Your words didn't just fill the air, they cut through it. Imagine a sword disguised as a sentence. That's what you are every time you speak truth. This wasn't about debate. This wasn't about differing opinions. This was warfare, energetic, unseen, and personal. Your voice carries codes that don't just inform, they awaken. You activate people. You ignite questions. You disrupt comfort zones. That's why they labeled you too much or too intense. Not because of what you said, but because of what your vibration forced them to confront. You made them look at themselves, and their shadows couldn't survive the reflection. They weren't defending peace, they were defending their parasitic positions. Their influence thrived in confusion, but your energy, it speaks in light. And when light shows up, manipulation doesn't just hide, it attacks. That's why they came after you. That's why every time you dropped a truth, even in casual conversation, retaliation followed. Because the moment you opened your mouth, the spiritual contracts they had with darkness started unraveling. You didn't come to argue, you came to unlock, and that terrified every spirit they secretly served. They thought if they could shut you up, they could stop the quake. But your voice was never just yours. It's wired to divine frequency, and divine frequency doesn't whisper. It shakes foundations. You are the alarm clock for the spiritually asleep. Every syllable carries energy that pushes darkness into corners where it can't hide. So no, they weren't offended by your message. They were exposed by it. And the truth is this: your voice isn't loud, it's lethal to everything false. That's why they tried to silence you, because when you speak, their demons lose their grip. Number 9. Their rituals became receipts. The universe turned their witchcraft into a confession. They thought they were covering their tracks in the dark, but the universe was printing their fingerprints in light. Let's get this straight. Chosen One, what they did in secret wasn't erased. It was recorded. Every candle lit in your name, every whispered curse, every manipulative chant laced with envy, none of it vanished. Energy doesn't disappear. It gets archived. And the universe, it keeps perfect records. You didn't need a camera. You didn't need witnesses. The cosmos was watching, and every vibration they released became evidence in a spiritual courtroom they didn't know they'd be standing in. Imagine thinking you're erasing someone, only to find out you're signing your own indictment in energy. That's why everything started unraveling. Sudden exposure, unexpected fallouts, their own words used against them, people turning cold, alliances breaking overnight. It wasn't karma coming someday, it was justice going live. The same energy they twisted to silence you became the light that burned through their lies. They scripted their downfall in spiritual ink, and now it's reading loud and clear across the atmosphere. You didn't have to say a word, your alignment said everything. The purity of your frequency was so sharp that falsehoods couldn't breathe around you. And the universe doesn't defend with noise, it defends with reversal. Their rituals didn't remove your power, they exposed their desperation. Every spiritual attack became a time-stamped receipt. Every plot was a signature. And every attempt to sabotage you became the very data used to dismantle them. They cast spells like criminals wiping fingerprints, not knowing the universe doesn't forget vibrations. So when you saw them lose jobs, friends, clout, or even their minds, that wasn't bad luck. That was disclosure. The hidden became seen, the masks melted, the lies imploded, and the same hands that tried to dig your spiritual grave. They're now trapped in it, holding the shovel. They didn't just fail to destroy you, they documented their downfall. Divine energy doesn't just protect you, it prosecutes everything that rises against you. And that trial, it's already in session. Truth is the judge. Resonance is the jury. And the verdict is echoing back loud and clear. Guilty by vibration. Number 10, they built the trap for you, then got caught in it themselves. Obsession is a silent confession. I tried to destroy you, and now I can't stop looking at what survived. They didn't walk away after casting that spell, Chosen One. They stuck around to watch it work. But instead of watching you fall, they watched you rise. And that rise, it ate them alive. When they couldn't silence you, they stalked you. When they couldn't break you, they studied you. They claimed you didn't matter, yet your name stayed in their mouths, their rituals, their group chats, and their dreams. They didn't just envy you, they fed on you, and in doing so, they starved themselves. Imagine tying someone to a chair, then forgetting you're the one holding the rope, and slowly pulling it around your own neck. That's what happened. They kept watching you, talking about you, mimicking you, even trying to hex you, but every time they did, they weren't binding you, they were binding themselves. Spiritual law is ruthless in its precision. What you obsess over, you energize. And your energy, chosen one, is too pure, too divine, too encoded for them to consume. So instead of draining you, their obsession drained them. Every mental replay of your name pulled their frequency lower. Every gossip session fed their own downfall. They thought they were tethering you, but what they really did was chain themselves to a frequency they could never reach. And when your energy kept rising, the rope snapped back like a whip. That's why they started crumbling. That's why blessings dried up, relationships turned sour, health declined, peace vanished. They weren't cursed by you. They were collapsing under the weight of their own attachment. They didn't know that stalking the sun only burns the eyes. You didn't fight back. You didn't clap back. You didn't even flinch. You just kept going, and your steady rise became their spiritual punishment. The more they watched, the more they witnessed what they could never stop. Their obsession became their execution. And now, their downfall speaks louder than your words ever had to. Number 11. They tried to curse you, but ended up crowning you instead. Every spell cast against a chosen one is secretly a key to their next level. If it doesn't break you, it builds you. They tried to tear you down, chosen one, but all they really did was trigger your ascension. That so-called curse they sent was never powerful enough to destroy you, but it was potent enough to awaken you. You didn't just survive their attacks, you evolved through them. The universe took their dark intentions, spun them through the law of transmutation, and turned their poison into your power. Imagine trying to poison a tree, only to discover the roots turned the toxin into fruit. That's what happened to you. You were never meant to stay ordinary, but pressure had to come. Friction had to ignite fire. Every time they attacked, the universe whispered, "Rise." And you did. You stopped doubting. You started sensing. You no longer begged for protection. You embodied it. Their rituals became your resistance training. Every shadow they threw sharpened your light. Every betrayal hardened your discernment. And the deeper they tried to pull you down, the more spiritual muscle you built, rising back up. They thought they were interrupting your journey. What they actually did was accelerate it. Their curses became your coursework. Their obsession became your awakening. Their sabotage became the spark that activated your higher self. And now, you're vibrating on a level they can't even comprehend, let alone reach. What once felt like pain became prophecy. What once looked like warfare became witness that you are unshakable. They tried to bury you in spells, but the dirt turned into soil, and now you've rooted deeper than ever. You don't just walk with protection anymore, you walk with proof. The kind of proof that can't be taught, only earned in the heat of unseen battles. Their spell, it was the tool, but your spirit, it was the weapon. And now, chosen one, you're not just alive, you're activated. They tried to end your voice. Instead, they built your throne. Number 12. Their lies crumbled because truth doesn't expire, it evolves. Deception is loud and short-lived. Truth is quiet and eternal. They thought they could build a legacy on lies, chosen one, but the foundation they stood on was made of fog. It looked solid for a moment, but time always clears the air. They told stories about you. They twisted your character. They painted pictures of who you never were, expecting their words to become permanent reality. But truth is patient. It doesn't shout or scramble. It waits. And when the dust settles, it remains. Imagine building a castle out of smoke, then acting surprised when it disappears in daylight. That's exactly what happened. While they were busy shaping a narrative to tarnish you, you were quietly growing into the proof that exposed it. You didn't retaliate. You didn't argue. You simply stayed aligned. And alignment always turns into evidence. Your peace began to contradict their drama. Your glow started to unmask their bitterness. Your blessings silenced their slander. They didn't expect time to betray them, but time always sides with the truth. They weren't ready for people to start noticing, but people did. The inconsistencies, the bitterness in their tone, the way their stories changed depending on who they were talking to. The fake smiles started to crack. The sympathy they collected began to shrink. Because when truth walks in the room, lies can't breathe. You didn't need to speak. Your results did the talking. They used gossip to create noise, but your silence created momentum. Now the tables have turned, and not because you forced them to, but because truth never stays buried. The very spell they cast to erase you became the backdrop of your evolution. They tried to destroy your name, and now they have to watch it rise, not just clean, but untouchable. You're not just surviving their deception, you're thriving in spite of it. The reason they're unraveling is simple. Deception is exhausting to maintain. But you're light, and light doesn't fight darkness, it exposes it. What they built has already collapsed. What you built is just getting started. The truth wasn't just revealed, it won. Number 13. Their death wasn't just an end, it was a broadcast. Don't touch what's protected. When a chosen one is attacked, the first fall is not punishment. It's a divine announcement. Back off or be next. That death, chosen one, wasn't a random tragedy. It was a reckoning. It was the final page in a book of ignored warnings. The universe had whispered first, with confusion, sickness, mental chaos, sudden misfortunes. But they kept going. They thought nothing would happen. They thought your silence meant weakness. But what they didn't see was that behind your stillness stood an ancient force, watching, recording, waiting. Imagine repeatedly poking a sleeping volcano and then acting surprised when it erupts. They crossed boundaries that weren't theirs to touch. They invoked spirits that demand blood for fuel. They sent destruction toward a sealed soul, and when that energy couldn't stick to you, it ricocheted. That death was not about revenge. It was about alignment. A correction that echoed through both realms, and for everyone watching, it became proof. You are not just protected, you are declared, marked, guarded by a law that doesn't ask for respect, it enforces it. This wasn't about fear, it was about confirmation. The universe didn't do this to scare you, it did it to prove to you and every onlooker, this one is off limits. That death wasn't just the collapse of one enemy. It was the spiritual lockdown of your name. You've been sealed. Now, any force that even thinks about testing you will remember what happened the last time someone tried. You didn't become dangerous through revenge. You became untouchable through alignment. The silence you held while they plotted has now become the sermon that echoes through every dimension. Your energy speaks louder than their spells ever did. And now, you don't need to defend your name. The universe already built a wall around it. That death was the close of a cycle. It buried not just a person, but every lingering attempt to harm you. You're not just surviving, you've become the warning label for every future enemy who thinks chosen energy is something to play with. So, Chosen One, if this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, that you're protected, sealed, and rising while your enemies fall, then don't leave without showing love. Press the like button if you haven't already, and if you're still not part of this growing family, hit that subscribe button now. This space was built for souls like you, real ones, rising in truth, power, and purpose. You are not alone, and this is only the beginning. More revelations are coming. Stay aligned, stay protected, and stay ready, because the universe isn't finished proving why you were never to be touched.